Welcome to Enterprise Bank Presents Dollars and Cents. I am Prema Nagathan, Security Officer at Enterprise Bank, and with me is my co-host, Ken LaValle, Security Specialist at Enterprise Bank. Folks who have tuned into Dollars and Cents, Enterprise Bank Presents Dollars and Cents, know that this is a show that Ken and I invite varied guests to talk about some of the issues with financial exploitation, whether it's towards the elderly, youngsters, college-going kids. Really try and bring as much information to you, because one of the things that Ken and I strongly believe in is knowledge is power. Awareness is key. So that has really been our goal, and kind of going along with those goals, we have a great show today as well, and we have a great guest joining us today on our show, Dennis Hohengasser from AARP. Dennis, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And Ken, I know we have a great topics lined up today.
So Dennis, we know you're a volunteer at the AARP with the American Association of Retired Persons, and we appreciate you being here and talking with us. But I just want to take us back to earlier this morning when you appeared at the Lowell Senior Center. Right. And you gave a presentation. It was really incredible. And there were dozens of seniors there listening to your presentation about the current trends, the current status of scams and frauds targeting the elderly. Right. So if you don't mind, kind of parlaying from what we learned this morning, some of the trends and scams you're seeing and what the AARP is basically trying to disseminate to the public, to their membership about this particular problem. I'd love to hear about that.
Sure. As you mentioned, education is probably the best defense against becoming a victim of fraud, scams, and identity theft. As a matter of fact, AARP has put together a website called aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork. It's an online website that's available to anybody. You don't have to be over 50. You don't have to be a member. And it has a lot of information out there. And they put it together because knowledge is power, as you had said. The website has a couple things you can do. One, you can sign up to get every other week notifications called Fraud Watch Alerts. They're sent out either to an email account, or you can have them text right to your phone using texting to 50750. Whoops, and let me back that up. 50757. So it's 50757. And that will get you a text message every other week about some of the current scams that are going on. And they're short. They talk about how it works, what to do, and what not to do.
And this is free service,
it's
right?
It's free service, yes, all free services. You can actually go onto that website and check your own community right here in Lowell or neighboring community to see what kind of scams are being reported. You can listen to over 35 different podcasts. They're about a half hour in length, and they're interviewing somebody who's been a victim of a scam, fraud, or identity theft, how it happened, and how you can prevent from becoming a victim. There's constantly updated articles on there. And if you do get scammed and you want help, there's a number you can call right on that website, aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork. It'll bring it right up. Call, and an actual person will answer. The press 1 for, press 2 for.
Right.
And they will talk about what you can do to protect yourself after becoming a victim. And also you can request Fraud Watch presentations, as I did in Lowell at the Senior Center. AARP will do these free of charge for anybody, for senior centers, for assisted living communities, for church groups, for social groups, for fraternal groups. We'll come out, and it's about a 1-hour presentation that we do.
Great.
Fantastic.
And Dennis, you've been doing this as a volunteer, mostly to try and reach out to the community members and make them aware of the various frauds and scams.
Exactly. Oftentimes we have people say, well, how do scammers get a hold of my information?
Right.
And there's a couple ways. Things that I really never thought of initially. But if you fill out registrations, enter contests and fill out these registration forms, your name, your date of birth, maybe not date of birth, but your name, address, and some other personal information about yourself. It seems pretty innocuous, but this is building a database, and these databases are sold to other people and used for searching. If you fill out warranty cards for a new kind of a product that you bought, again, that creates a database, and those databases are traded and sold. If you fill out surveys, if you have a Facebook account, that's a buffet sometimes for scammers. You can find out all kinds of information. One of the things that you can find out is the mother's maiden name, because that's one of the questions when you call your credit card
Right.
company to
Yeah.
verify who you are. What's your mother's maiden name? It's not rocket science to look at some of these websites, the Facebook pages, and figure out what the mother's maiden name is by looking at
yeah.
Uncle Joe and down the
Right,
line.
right.
And also, if somebody in your family passes away, that can also be another avenue for them to get information through the obituary. Things like getting the person's name, their date of birth, their date of death,
Yep.
where they lived.
Yep.
It may require that somebody gets a phone call from, quote, the insurance company saying, you may not realize it, but your husband had a $100,000 life insurance policy.
Right.
And in fact, we'd like to get you that money as soon as possible. If you send us the $4,000 processing fee, we'll get the $100,000 out. But they're using obituaries more and more to build profiles of individuals.
Interesting.
It's an interesting thing I remembered about the surveys that you talked about and people providing information, not only trying to find out the maiden name, but sometimes they'll say, what's your favorite color? You know, what's your type of dog that you like? And sometimes this information is what we use in our passwords,
Yeah.
which is you have to be really mindful about what type of a password you're creating for, like your email, for maybe your online banking, different things, online accounts that you might have. So that's a really good point.
Exactly.
And you're not thinking about that when you're doing the surveys. And sometimes I'll get calls on the phone. Oh, we're doing a survey. Would you be interested in participating?
Yeah.
What do you recommend? Should people do? You know, if someone's calling with it from the insurance company.
Hang up, probably. If someone's asking you to send them money before they give you some money through a settlement of some sort, that's a dead giveaway that this is probably a scam. Some of the red flags are if, one, they ask for money, they say you have to do it now, there's a sense of urgency, and you can't talk to anybody. Don't tell anybody this. We see that with the grandparent schemes. When quote, the grandchild calls and says, I'm stuck in Brazil and I was at my friend's wedding down here and I got in an accident or pulled over by the police, I need bail money. They usually say, but don't tell my parents. And they don't tell you. So the whole thing about doing it now, I need to do it now so I can get out of jail, don't tell anybody. Those are two big red flags. And the fact that they want you to send money, that's another big red flag. And the money, they don't ask for a check, they don't ask for cash. They'll ask for things like, could you wire the money down to, and once you use Western Union or another wiring service to send money down, once it's gone, it's gone. There's no tracking of that.
Right.
Right.
So asking to wire money is a big red flag. The other one is to do it with prepaid debit cards. And I think it's kind of funny that they will say that they're from the IRS and you owe money. And to pay it, you have to send them debit cards. I didn't think the IRS took debit cards
Right.
or prepaid debit cards.
Yeah. Right. And if you have any questions, call the IRS number
Exactly.
directly and find out. And when it comes to wire transfers or doing transaction at the bank, I know we train our employees all the time about these types of scams because they need to know what's going on. So when customers come in and
Yeah.
wanting to wire money that might seem out of the norm for the customer, we are encouraging our employees, the frontline staff, our team members to be asking questions to the customers. And that's more so to assist them and to detect if there is something out of the ordinary, if it's a scam, not so much to pry on their personal matters. So that is extremely important for us.
Yeah. So
for
they say,
internal
oh,
training.
you're taking a large vacation, big
Right.
vacation? No, it's my grandson.
Right.
And it's a, and
Yeah.
you're right, in banks and a lot of companies are now starting to do those kinds of things, those upfront questions to,
Sure. Protect the customer.
yeah, exactly.
What else is out there in the community that's going on right now?
Another thing that
us
we've seen more and more frequently are problems with Medicare. Seniors guard their health insurance, Medicare, very close. That this is an important thing. They don't want to lose it. And we're finding out that people are calling up and saying that they're from Medicare. And what can confuse the folks looking at their caller ID, it says it's coming from 1-800-Medicare, and that's their number. First of all, Medicare will never call you.
Right.
And that 1-800-Medicare that's appearing on your caller ID, it was spoofed. They can spoof any number they want. I mean, you probably have received calls at your house coming from your own phone number.
Right. Oh, yes, I have seen those. Yeah.
Or it'll say it's coming from the IRS, the 1040 number. So in the whole thing with the phone, I was amazed to find out that this still the main way of getting a hold of elderly folks in particular, and to begin a scam is doing it through the phone.
Right.
I always thought it was maybe the email or through the internet, but it isn't. It's through the actual phone.
Right. The chart you showed today, you showed phone versus mail versus email. The phone far outweighed
Yeah.
the number of other options for being able to get into someone's account and get information from them. And I think all of us can attest to the fact that we receive phone calls, right, on our cell phones and our home phones
Yeah.
from these numbers we don't know who they belong to. How do we stop that from happening, Dennis? And if you get a call like that, what should you do?
You can always hang up.
Hang up is
Yeah.
for sure.
Hang
You know,
up,
it's something that,
okay.
But
you know,
isn't there some ability to block those calls?
I know that both at the state and federal level, the legislatures are trying to put in laws that will prevent people from doing these types of block robocalls all over the place. It may take a while. There is something called Nomo Robo,
Nomo Robo?
Nomorobo.
Okay.
And it's something you can have your telephone provider put on your line. And I have it on mine. When a robocall comes in, the phone rings once and stops. So I never get up to look at the caller ID until the second ring.
So people can reach out to their phone
Yes.
service providers
Yep.
to look into that,
Comcast,
something like
Verizon,
that.
whoever happens.
Nomo
Okay.
Robo.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
No.
basically what that allows for the phone to have happen is that the phone rings once.
Right,
If it rings twice, you know it's a call that potentially is legit.
right,
Okay,
potentially.
right, potentially,
yeah.
because
Exactly.
some get through.
Yeah, yeah.
But going back to the Medicare, we see people calling the elderly, things like, well, we just had the new Medicare cards that went out over this past year, from April of last year to April of this past year. And in doing so, it was a prime target for elderly, saying, did you get your card yet?
Oh, okay.
I see.
Yeah.
You didn't? Well, let me have your old number. And the old number was what?
Your social.
Security.
Yeah.
And we'll check. Or they're even calling now saying, we have a great offer for you. We can send you a plastic card instead of the paper card that you got. That doesn't happen. There
Right.
is no plastic card.
Yeah.
And to get you that new card, let me have your number, your
Okay.
Medicare
Right.
number.
Right.
And even though it is not our social security number anymore, it still will offer the ability to tap into your Medicare account and start to bill Medicare for things that you never received.
Yeah. And you mentioned social security numbers.
Right.
And when someone is most vulnerable, when their social security number becomes what?
Public.
It becomes public, but the person is given a social security number when?
Oh, they're given at birth.
Right.
Yeah.
And so for the first 16 years, that child may never use that social security
Right,
number,
right.
but it's out there.
Right.
Right.
And someone could have it.
Yes.
And be using it unbeknownst to that child and that
Yeah,
family.
exactly.
Right.
So people calling you on the phone, whether they say it's from a federal agency, local law enforcement, even if they're saying it's from the bank,
Right.
and asking you for information, whether it's your personal information, asking you to send money, whether it's in the form of wire transfers, gift cards, iTunes gift cards, Green Dot, these are all some of
Right.
the common methods that they use.
Yeah.
I think people really need to know that there's a problem and
Yes.
there's more scrutiny required for that.
Yeah. If somebody calls
Yeah.
you, you don't give your personal information to them. It's only if you initiate the call and you know who you're talking to.
Yeah. I know we have to take a quick break.
Okay.
We'll come back. There's so much more we want to talk. So we'll take a quick break and we'll
Great.
be right back.
Super.
This program is proudly sponsored by Enterprise Bank, a full-service commercial institution serving 17 communities. Enterprise Bank helps create successful businesses, meaningful jobs, strong, vibrant communities, and opportunities and prosperity for our customers, shareholders, and employees. To speak to an Enterprise advisor, call 978-459-9000 or visit our website, enterprisebanking.com. Enterprise, an independent bank with community at its core. Member FDIC.
Hi, welcome back to Enterprise Bank Presents Dollars and Cents. This is Ken LaValle from Enterprise Bank, along with my co-host Prima Nagathan and our guest today, Dennis Hohengasser from AARP. So we were talking about some of the frauds and scams and the work that AARP does to protect the consumer here in the country. Tell us about continuing to have that conversation about the Medicare scam possibilities. Tell me about that, Dennis.
One of the couple of latest things for Medicare scams are getting a call, and we've seen the ads on TV. You may be eligible for a free brace, and Medicare will pay for it. Because you may be eligible doesn't mean you need one.
Right.
It starts with a call. You call, and based on the kinds of questions you answer, my gosh, you're going to be eligible. And before you know it, you've given them your Medicare number, and they're sending you all these braces, probably none of them which you need. And then they bill Medicare, and it's getting very, very costly for Medicare. And the other thing are the genetic testing. You get a call at your house saying that Medicare will pay for genetic testing. Not necessarily. It has to be prescribed by your doctor.
I see.
It can't be just because I want one.
Right.
And it's usually relative to some kind of a health situation that could be genetic across family lines. And they would send you they're going to send you a free kit that you send back. And of course, to do this, to have it processed, you need to give them, again, your Medicare number. And again, just because it's not your Social Security number doesn't mean it's not valuable. It is still very valuable.
Right.
And we're seeing a lot of folks getting these bills sent to Medicare for these genetic testing.
Yeah. What about these work-at-home scams? And people say, hey, call this number 1-800 for a work-at-home, $40 an hour. Tell us about that.
Well, if you've driven down the street and you see a sign on the telephone pole, work from home, earn $40 an hour, and it may result in you calling, and they are just so excited to have you as a new employee. And to make sure that we could send you all the paperwork and you could apply, but we could do it right over the phone now.
Yeah.
And make sure that your first check gets to you really quickly. So I need your name, your date of birth, your Social Security number.
And that personal information.
Personal information.
Yeah.
That personal information is so important,
Right.
and you should tell nobody.
Yeah.
Right.
And you mentioned today, we're going to talk about the IRS scam in a minute because, as we're approaching tax season, but you mentioned something very interesting today. You talked about the ether.
Yes.
Tell us about the ether and what that means.
When AARP put this program, this Fraud Watch Network program together, they went into jails and they talked
Went to jails.
They went to and talked to these people who were put behind bars for
Committing these crimes.
yes, fraud, scams, and identity theft. And they said, "Why are you so good at this?" And they all said the same thing. You have to keep people under the ether, under the emotional ether, so they're not thinking logically. And I didn't understand exactly what that was until I had an incident happen to me about 6 years ago. And when I read this, everything clicked. I had a problem with my laptop. It looked like it was a Microsoft issue, so I Googled Microsoft Tech Support and press enter, and there's the first number that comes up. And it wasn't Microsoft, although it said it was.
Right.
I dialed it, and before I knew, I did the thing that you should never do. I gave them access to my laptop, and they loaded some software on it. I got away easy. It was only $100, but it took a friend of mine hours to get it off. But
Because they are now infecting your laptop.
Exactly, yes.
And if you're online banking and things like that, now they have access to that. They could be taking your money without your knowledge
Yep.
through the online means, right?
And
That's what they
I
would
was
have done.
panicking, and all of a sudden the emotional ether thing made sense to me. My emotional ether was panic. It happens if someone's recently divorced or somebody recently widowed, their emotions are raw, and they're not going to react logically to some things that go on. That's why they're looking at these dating sites now. There's a lot of stuff going on with those. People posting a lot of information that they think is just limited to that site, and it isn't. It's getting traded, and people make some very uninformed decisions when they're emotionally charged.
Yeah.
It could be grief, it could be fear, it could be elation, because guess what? You've just won $100,000. So they're not thinking logically, they're thinking emotionally.
Yeah.
Right.
And one of the things we have seen in working through some of the scenarios that you talked about is a lot of times they go unreported.
Yes.
And why is that? Why are people hesitating to report this to local law enforcement or some of the
Well,
local agencies?
it was a while before I could admit to anybody that I gave access to my laptop and they loaded software. Part of it's embarrassment, especially with the senior population. If they tell their relatives, Graham, maybe you shouldn't take care of your own finances.
Right.
They lose a sense of independence.
Right.
That I'm going to turn over my banking to my son, daughter, or other relative. So part of it is embarrassment. They don't want to tell anybody. And I was at a tabling event for AARP a couple months ago, and somebody came up and we're talking about fraud. And she said, my father was taken for $2,000 with the grandparent scheme. He waited 2 or 3 days before it was just eating at him horribly that he had to tell somebody. He says, he didn't want to.
So he knew he had been victimized.
Oh, yeah, he knew he was,
But he couldn't tell anybody.
No.
Because he was so ashamed.
exactly. And you shouldn't be.
There shouldn't be a stigma to it because I think, we do and see this all the time, and I think we realize that it happens to a lot of people. It doesn't matter your age, your gender,
It doesn't.
your professional capabilities. It is happening to people as we are talking. I'm sure these calls are going out and people are getting victimized.
Yes.
So I think we sort of have a social responsibility to be able to share this information and try to do something about this
Yes.
as a team.
Right. And you mentioned also it doesn't matter your age or, a male, female, but you also mentioned it doesn't matter if you think you're
Smart.
smart.
Right.
And people
Right.
think, I'm too smart for that. I'll never fall for that trick.
Yeah.
And they do.
And one of the things with reporting too, from the bank side of things, what we see is sometimes if you call the bank right away, even though you send the money out through maybe a debit card or some other means that you wrote out a check, there might still be time to stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
There might still be time. It's possible. In not all cases, it depends on when it gets reported, or even for local law enforcement, maybe AARP has things that they might be able to do to try and get the money back, or at least do something. So people shouldn't lose hopes that my money's gone. I can't do anything, and I'm not going to tell anybody.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the IRS. Internal
Well,
Revenue
it is
Service, our
tax-
favorite topic.
It is tax season.
Yeah.
Tax
That's
season.
why safeguarding your personal information, in particular your social security number, your name, date of birth, is that if somebody can get a hold of some of that information, they can file your tax return for you and have the money come to them.
Right.
And a friend of mine moved to Florida a couple of years ago. He was down there for all of 4 months when the exact thing happened.
Wow.
He got the letter from the Internal Revenue Service saying, "I'm sorry, this has already been processed."
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It happens more than you would think. IRS never calls you, and you may see on your caller ID that the IRS, there's their phone number,
Right.
and they would never threaten you. They will always begin with a letter. They will never start with a phone call. They're not going to threaten to have the police come over.
Right.
The other thing in terms of identifying you, people sometimes get very fearful when they're on the line and the scammer starts to threaten them. I know that you live in that nice white house and the big tree on the right and the garage on the left, and they're thinking, oh my.
Right. They know a lot
They
about
know where
me.
I live.
Yeah.
They're probably sitting out in front of my house. No, they probably went to Google Earth,
Right.
put your address in, and
That's
bingo,
right.
there's a picture of your house.
Right.
Right.
And if you're not real savvy in terms of using the internet, you may not know that.
Right. Yeah. I think when there's a situation like that where you feel there's a personal safety at risk, call the local PD
Yes,
right
definitely.
away.
Absolutely.
Because,
Definitely.
you need to report that.
It was interesting, and then I showed that intensity map today of the entire United States. And where the most intense activity is for fraudulent activity, guess what state it was in? It was in Florida.
Yeah,
Why? Because there are so many people who are retired in the state of Florida.
exactly.
So that state is the epicenter.
Yeah.
Although Massachusetts
Oh,
is
yeah.
very, very problematic,
Yeah.
as you can imagine.
Massachusetts, New
Yeah.
Hampshire,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
And then, once the tax season is done, spring rolls in, right? And there are concerns around that time of the year, and what should people be aware of?
Well, as either through November or through May, with the Veterans Days coming on, Memorial Day or Veterans Day in November, there are certain scams that are targeted toward veterans, unfortunately. Things asking them for certain information, and if they don't, they're going to lose some of their benefits. Or we can provide you with extra benefits if you give us this information. Again, if you go to the aarp.org/fraudwatch website, there is a resource table there. And there are 56 different types of scams that you can click on each one of those and find out how it works and some do's and don'ts.
Okay.
And there are 3 or 4 of them that are specific to veterans. So
Wow.
veterans have to keep their ears open too.
Okay, yeah.
Did you just say that was updated from 28
Yeah.
scams now to 56?
Yeah, when it
It's
started,
doubled?
when they put that resource page together, there were about 28. And that was probably maybe a year ago. It's up to 56 now.
Right.
And some are variations on a theme, but they can work them, these scammers.
Sure.
This is their livelihood. This is how
Absolutely.
they make their money.
Yeah.
They're morally bankrupt
Right.
people.
And you said that there was a percentage that they're shooting for.
Yeah, with the emails is what, 0.1% when they send out these massive emails. And when you talk about emails, if you get an email from somebody and you don't know who it is, don't click on any of those links.
Right.
Because that can download malware
Yeah.
or a virus onto your machine.
Without a doubt.
And again, your machine is only as safe as the last update to the virus package that you downloaded.
I see, yeah. And just quickly, handyman scams.
Get resources.
Right.
You see a couple of big ones. Usually the asphalt driveway.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And roof
we had this
work, yeah.
roofers. We
Yeah.
had this extra asphalt, and we know that you could use some work.
Yeah.
Right.
Cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would do it cheap.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, get resources and check the resources. Get references. Talk to people that they've done work for.
Sure.
You know, there's no such thing as a free lunch. If
Right.
it sounds too good to be true,
Right.
it is.
It
So you
is.
talked about the red flags today.
Yes.
Just quickly, tell us those red flags
Red
again.
flags. First of all, if they want you to do it now,
Right.
sense of urgency.
Right.
They don't want you to talk to anybody. Just do it quick. Keep this a secret. And the other one is that they're asking for money. If they ask for money or personal information, and if they ask for money, the biggest red flag is that we want you to wire it, or we want you to do prepaid debit cards or iTunes cards.
Right.
Those are the biggest
Right.
red flags that are out there.
And sometimes the debit card, the gift card, when they ask you to go to a store and purchase a gift card, they're asking you just for the numbers. So sometimes you think, well, but the gift card's still in my hands. They don't have the money, but you've given the critical information
Yeah.
from the gift
Yeah,
card.
because you go
Yeah.
to CVS or to Targets and the big kiosks with all these gift cards, and you get some. Scammers do the same thing. They go in, grab a bunch of them, go to the back of the store, take their phone out, and they take pictures of the back of the cards that has the number.
Yeah.
And that number is the one that you have to use to redeem it.
Right.
And you're going to give it to your grandson or niece or somebody, and 3 months later, they're going to end up using it.
Right.
And it's going to be empty because the scammer has already unloaded the money off of
Ah,
it.
interesting. So what you do is they take the card from the kiosk and return it, and then you buy it, you purchase it, but it's already been compromised.
And then they're
Right.
trying to cash
Wow.
in
Yeah.
on whatever you load that
That's
card
a
up.
man
That
on
is
me.
pretty.
That's unbelievable.
AARP, they have both the magazine and the bulletin that comes out every other month.
Yeah.
And they always have a section on fraud and scams. And it's always something that you probably never guessed.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
Well, it's amazing what AARP has for Fraud Watch. I hope folks tuning into today's show will sign up for those alerts. It comes to you. They're making you aware of what's the latest and greatest with fraud scams, so you can become a little bit more aware of these things and detect them before
Yes.
you've lost information or money.
Going back to your beginning, education is paramount.
Right. Absolutely.
That's what this is all about.
Right. Exactly.
That's why we do this.
Right. Dennis, this is great information. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming on our show. Ken, you want to wrap this up?
No, I just want to say, Dennis, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the rice pudding.
I did.
Thank you.
Thank you.